The bridge of the Galactic Council flagship Harmony hummed with quiet activity as Admiral Zextar reviewed the latest reports from the Outer Rim territories. His four eyes scanned the holographic displays showing peaceful trade routes and diplomatic missions. The Council had worked for 3 centuries to bring order to this chaotic galaxy, and they were proud of their success. "Sir," Communications Officer Valera called from her station, her voice carrying an unusual tremor. "We're receiving distress signals from the Kepler 442 system." Zextar's mandibles clicked in mild annoyance. The Kepler system housed a primitive species called humans who had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. They were barely worth the Council's attention, classified as a Class 3 civilization with limited technological capabilities. "What seems to be their problem now?" he asked, not bothering to look up from his reports. Valera's skin changed to a pale blue, a sign of distress among her species. "Sir, it's not the humans sending the distress signal. It's the Vorthack supremacy. They're reporting complete mission success." The bridge fell silent. Every officer knew what a Vorthack mission meant in human territory. The Vorthack were one of the Council's more aggressive member species, known for their efficiency in dealing with problematic civilizations. But they were supposed to be conducting a simple resource survey in that system. "Explain," Zextar said, his voice growing cold. "The Vorthack report successful completion of Operation Cleanslate. They have eliminated what they call the human pest infestation from all major population centers. Estimated casualties." Valera paused, her voice barely a whisper. 12 billion individuals. The tactical display activated automatically, showing the Kepler 442 system in stark detail. Where Earth's blue and green surface had once appeared on their sensors, now only smoke and fire remained visible. The planet's major cities were dark. Nuclear signatures indicated massive bombardment across all continents. Science Officer Crothon looked up from his console, his reptilian features showing confusion. "Sir, I don't understand. The humans were scheduled for standard diplomatic contact in 6 months. They posed no threat to Council interests." Zextar's blood ran cold as he realized what had happened. 3 weeks ago, during a routine Council session, Representative Murgoth of the Vorthack had proposed preemptive action against emerging species that might someday challenge Council authority. The motion had been voted down overwhelmingly, with most Council members calling it barbaric and unnecessary. Apparently, the Vorthack had decided to act without authorization. "Get me high command immediately," Zextar ordered, "and patch me through to the Vorthack fleet commander." Within minutes, the imposing figure of Vorthack Fleet Admiral Gorthin appeared on the main screen. His scarred carapace and razor-sharp teeth gave him a fearsome appearance even by galactic standards. Behind him, other Vorthack officers celebrated what they clearly considered a great victory. "Admiral Zextar," Gorthin said with obvious pleasure, "we have delivered the Council a great gift. The human threat has been eliminated before it could grow into something dangerous." "Threat?" Zextar's voice carried barely controlled rage. "They were a peaceful species. They hadn't even made contact with other civilizations yet." Gorthin's laugh was a harsh, grating sound. "Peace is weakness, Admiral. These humans were already showing signs of rapid technological advancement. Their military academies taught something they called total war. Their entertainment was filled with stories of resistance against superior forces. Left unchecked, they would have become a plague upon this galaxy. You had no authorization for military action." "Authorization?" Gorthin's eyes glowed with contempt. "The strong do not ask permission from the weak, Admiral. We saw a future threat and eliminated it. The Council should thank us." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Zextar immediately opened a priority channel to all Council fleets in the sector. "This is Admiral Zextar to all vessels. Proceed immediately to the Kepler 442 system. We have an unauthorized military action in progress. All ships are ordered to, sir." Valera interrupted, her voice filled with panic. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from Earth's surface. Something is happening." The tactical display zoomed in on Earth's darkened continents. Deep underground, powerful energy readings were spiking across the planet. Computer analysis indicated the signatures were coming from facilities that hadn't appeared on any previous scan. What are those readings? Zextar demanded. Crothon worked frantically at his console. Sir, I'm detecting what appears to be underground installations across all major continents. They're heavily shielded. Our sensors couldn't penetrate them before. But whatever's inside is powering up. On the display, pinpricks of light began appearing across Earth's surface. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Each light source was emerging from concealed underground facilities that the Vorthak bombardment had somehow missed. Sir, Valera's voice was barely audible. I'm receiving a transmission from Earth's surface. It's a human signal. That's impossible, Crothon protested. The Vorthak confirmed total elimination of all major population centers. Put it through, Zextar ordered. The main screen flickered, and, suddenly, they were looking at a human face. The being appeared young by human standards, with dark skin and eyes that held an expression of cold, calculated fury. Behind her, other humans moved with military precision through what appeared to be a vast underground command center. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Force, the human said, her voice carrying an authority that made several council officers step back involuntarily. To whatever galactic civilization is monitoring this frequency, you have just witnessed the attempted genocide of the human species. Zextar found his voice. This is Admiral Zextar of the Galactic Council. The attack on your world was unauthorized. The perpetrators will be brought to justice. Admiral Chin's expression didn't change. Justice? Admiral, you speak of justice while 12 billion of my people lie dead in the ashes above my head. Tell me, what justice exists for that? The Vorthak acted without council approval. They will face severe consequences for their actions. Consequences. Chen repeated the word as if tasting something bitter. Admiral, my species has a saying. Actions have consequences. The Vorthak wanted to see monsters. They wanted to face a species worthy of their fear. She paused, and, when she continued, her voice carried a promise that made the bridge's temperature seem to drop. They're about to get their wish. Behind Chun, holographic displays showed the true scope of what the Vorthak had missed. Underground cities housing millions of humans. Manufacturing facilities that had been producing weapons and ships in secret for decades. Training centers where human soldiers had been preparing for exactly this scenario. For 50 years, Chun continued, since we first detected your galactic civilizations, we've been preparing. Not for conquest, not for expansion, but for survival. We learned about species like the Vorthak. We studied your wars, your tactics, your weaknesses. We built our cities deep underground, and our defenses even deeper. The tactical display showed more installations coming online across Earth's surface. Weapon platforms that had been disguised as natural formations. Shipyards buried beneath mountains. Everything the humans had built in secret while pretending to be nothing more than a primitive, peaceful civilization. We hoped we would never need these preparations, Chen said. You murdered our children. But you made one crucial mistake. What mistake? Gorthan demanded. You assumed that what you could see was all that existed. Chen gestured to her tactical display, which now showed the true extent of human preparation. Every city you destroyed was a decoy. Every installation you bombed was designed to be sacrificed. The real Earth, the Earth that matters, was always underground, always protected, always ready. The human fleet was moving now, emerging from concealment throughout the system. Their ships were smaller than the massive Vorthak dreadnoughts, but there were so many of them that they darkened the space around Earth like a swarm of angry insects. What do you want? Zextar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. What we want is simple, Admiral, Chen replied. We want the Vorthak to understand the difference between genocide and war. They chose to exterminate what they thought was a helpless species. They're about to learn what happens when that helpless species fights back. The human ships were accelerating now, their formation tight and disciplined. Whatever technologies they had developed in secret, their vessels moved with a grace and speed that impressed even veteran galactic military officers. The Vorthak wanted monsters, Chen continued. They wanted to face a species that would justify their fear and hatred. Very well. We'll give them exactly what they asked for. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. By the time we're finished with them, every species in this galaxy will understand that humanity is not prey. The transmission ended, leaving the Council fleet to watch as thousands of human ships formed up around their devastated homeworld. In the depths of space, humanity was about to show the galaxy what they had learned during 50 years of secret preparation. The Vorthak had wanted to see Earth's monsters. They were about to discover that the real monsters had been hiding underground all along, waiting for exactly this moment to reveal themselves to an unprepared galaxy. And, in the command centers deep beneath Earth's scorched surface, Admiral Sarah Chun began issuing orders that would transform humanity from victims into something far more dangerous. Survivors who refused to forgive, refused to forget, and refused to ever be victims again. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin, and the galaxy had no idea what they had awakened. Admiral Gorthon stared at his tactical display with growing disbelief. The human ships moved through space with a coordination that defied his understanding of primitive civilizations. Each vessel followed precise flight patterns that maximized their defensive capabilities while maintaining perfect offensive positioning. Fleet Commander, his tactical officer reported, voice trembling with uncertainty. The human vessels are using formation patterns I've never seen before. Their energy signatures indicate weapon systems significantly more advanced than our intelligence suggested. Gorthon's mandibles clicked in irritation. They're primitives with barely functional technology. Our dreadnoughts will crush them like insects. He turned to his communications officer. Send a fleet-wide message. All ships are to advance and demonstrate proper galactic superiority. The massive Vorthak fleet began its approach toward Earth, their dreadnoughts leading the charge. Each ship was 3 times larger than the human vessels, armed with plasma cannons that could level entire cities and protected by shields that had never been penetrated by enemy fire. But, as they closed the distance, something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't retreat. Instead, they began moving in patterns that seemed almost like a dance. Small groups broke away from the main formation, executed complex maneuvers, then rejoined the fleet in different positions. Within minutes, what had appeared to be a disorganized swarm had transformed into something resembling a vast, living organism. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, alarm clear in his voice. "The humans are using quantum-entangled communication networks. Every ship in their fleet is connected in real time. They're acting as a single coordinated entity." Gorthon's confidence wavered slightly. The Galactic Council had classified humans as barely capable of interplanetary travel. How did they possess quantum communication technology that even the Vorthak struggled to master? On Earth's surface, Admiral Chun watched the approaching enemy fleet from her underground command center. Holographic displays showed real-time positions of every ship in both fleets, while her staff coordinated with military installations across the planet and throughout the solar system. "Admiral," reported Commander Williams, her chief tactical officer, "all ships are in position. Ground-based defense platforms are online. The Vorthak are following predictable attack patterns based on their engagement history with other species." Chun nodded. For 50 years, humanity had studied every available record of galactic warfare. They had analyzed Vorthak tactics, weapon capabilities, shield technologies, and command structures. Everything about the approaching fleet was exactly as their simulations had predicted. "They still think we're primitives," she said quietly. "They have no idea what they're walking into." The first human ships to engage the Vorthak fleet were small, fast vessels that appeared almost defenseless compared to the massive enemy dreadnoughts. The Vorthak commanders watched with satisfaction as their plasma cannons locked onto the approaching targets. But, when they fired, the human ships simply weren't there anymore. "Impossible," Gorthon roared as he watched the tactical display. "Where did they go?" His science officer checked and rechecked the sensors. "Sir, they're using some kind of short-range teleportation technology. They appear, fire, then disappear before our weapons can lock onto them." The human ships materialized in seemingly random positions around the Vorthak fleet, unleashed devastating barrages of weapons fire, then vanished again before return fire could reach them. Each attack was precisely targeted, striking at specific weak points in Vorthak ship design that should have been classified information. How do they know where to hit us? The tactical officer demanded. The answer came from an unexpected source. A new voice joined the Vorthak fleet communications. Admiral Chin speaking directly to Gorthan. Commander, her voice was calm and professional. You're wondering how we know exactly where your ships are vulnerable. The answer is simple. We've been watching you for decades. On the main screen, Chin appeared again, but this time the background showed detailed schematics of Vorthak ship designs, weapon specifications, and tactical manuals. Every time your fleets engaged in combat with other species, we were monitoring. Every diplomatic exchange, every trade negotiation, every military exercise, we were there, invisible, learning everything about you. Chin's expression remained cold and calculating. Did you really think a species capable of interstellar travel couldn't develop effective stealth technology? The revelation hit the Vorthak fleet like a physical blow. For years, possibly decades, humans had been secretly observing galactic civilization. They had been studying, learning, preparing, all while pretending to be nothing more than a primitive species focused on their own small world. While you saw us as ignorant primitives, Chen continued, we were learning your languages, decoding your technologies, and preparing for exactly this moment. We knew that eventually, species like yours would try to destroy us. We've been ready. The human ships attacking the Vorthak fleet began displaying new capabilities. Weapons that fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Shield technology that adapted in real time to enemy fire. Most disturbing of all, tactical AI systems that predicted Vorthak maneuvers with impossible accuracy. Sir, the Vorthak science officer reported with growing panic. Their artificial intelligence systems are more advanced than anything in Council space. Their computers are calculating our responses faster than we can make decisions. Gorthan watched in mounting horror as his carefully planned assault dissolved into chaos. Human ships appeared and disappeared at will, striking with surgical precision while avoiding return fire. Worse, they seemed to know exactly where each Vorthak ship would be before the Vorthak commanders had even decided on their next move. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Admiral, Chin's tactical officer called out. Phase 2 installations are reporting ready status. Chin nodded. Begin orbital bombardment sequence. Around Earth's moon, massive weapon platforms that had been disguised as natural rock formations suddenly came online. Each installation was larger than a Vorthak dreadnought and armed with weapons that defied easy classification. The first barrage from Earth's hidden moon bases struck the Vorthak fleet with devastating effect. Streams of particles accelerated to near-light speed tore through Vorthak shields as if they didn't exist. The energy beams were so intense, they created temporary fusion reactions when they struck enemy armor. Impossible, Gorthan screamed as his flagship shuddered under the assault. No primitive species could construct weapons of this magnitude. Primitive. Chin's voice carried a note of dark amusement. Commander, while your species was conquering helpless civilizations, mine was learning to split atoms. While you were perfecting conventional plasma weapons, we were harnessing the fundamental forces of the universe itself. More human installations revealed themselves throughout the solar system. Weapon platforms hidden in asteroid belts began firing. Manufacturing facilities buried deep in Mars' crust launched additional ships to join the battle. Even some of the outer planets revealed themselves to be artificial constructs. Massive military installations designed to look like natural celestial bodies. The scope of human preparation was staggering. They hadn't just built a few hidden bunkers and ships. They had transformed their entire solar system into an elaborate fortress, with layers upon layers of defenses that had taken decades to construct. How long? Gorthan demanded, his voice barely controlled. How long have you been preparing for this? 53 years, 7 months, and 16 days, Chin replied without hesitation. Since the day we first detected galactic civilization and realized what kind of universe we lived in. The battle was turning into a rout. Vorthak ships that had seemed invincible minutes earlier were being systematically destroyed by weapons they couldn't understand and tactics they couldn't counter. Human forces appeared to know exactly where every Vorthak vessel was at all times, while the humans themselves remained nearly impossible to target. We studied your empire, Commander. Chun continued as the carnage unfolded around the Vorthak fleet. We learned about your conquests, your methods, your victims. We spoke with refugees from species you destroyed. We learned from their mistakes. The tactical display showed the true extent of the trap the Vorthak had fallen into. They had entered the Sol system expecting to face a primitive species with basic weapons. Instead, they had encountered a carefully orchestrated defense network that had been designed specifically to counter their tactics. Every species you've conquered made the same mistake, Chen explained. They fought you with conventional weapons and conventional tactics. They met strength with strength and lost because you were stronger. Her voice carried a note of cold satisfaction. We decided to try a different approach. The human ships weren't just faster and more maneuverable than the Vorthak vessels. They were using entirely different principles of warfare. Instead of trying to match the enemy's firepower, they struck at unexpected angles with weapons the Vorthak couldn't effectively defend against. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, they appeared and disappeared at will, striking from every direction simultaneously. You wanted to see what humanity would look like as a military threat, Chen said as the last of the Vorthak dreadnoughts began to suffer critical damage. Congratulations, Commander. You've achieved your goal. The remaining Vorthak ships attempted to withdraw, but found their escape routes blocked by additional human forces that seemed to materialize from nowhere. The retreat became a running battle through the outer solar system, with human ships pursuing their fleeing enemies with relentless efficiency. This isn't warfare, Gorthan whispered as his command ship suffered another devastating hit. This is extermination. Now you understand? Chen replied. This is exactly what you brought to our world, Commander. The only difference is that we're better at it than you are. As the last Vorthak ship limped away from the Sol system, heavily damaged and barely functional, Admiral Chun turned her attention to the wider galaxy. The Vorthak had provided humanity with an excellent opportunity to field test their weapons and tactics against a real enemy. The results had exceeded all expectations. Commander Williams, she said quietly, begin Phase 3 operations. It's time to visit the Vorthak homeworld. Admiral, Williams responded. What about the Galactic Council? They're requesting immediate communication. Chen considered this for a moment. The Council ships had watched the entire battle from a safe distance, observing as humanity systematically dismantled one of the galaxy's most feared military forces. Tell the Council they're welcome to observe, she said finally. They wanted to see what monsters look like. They're about to get a comprehensive education. Throughout human space, massive fleets began moving toward Vorthak territory. Ships that had been hidden for decades emerged from concealment. Weapons that had never been tested in real combat were loaded and prepared for use. The machinery of war that humanity had built in secret was finally being unleashed upon the galaxy. The Vorthak had wanted to eliminate a potential threat before it could grow dangerous. Instead, they had awakened something far worse than they had ever imagined, a species that had spent 50 years preparing for exactly this moment, and had emerged from their trial by fire stronger, angrier, and more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity's war was just beginning, and the universe was about to learn why humans had always told stories about monsters. The Galactic Council emergency session convened within hours of the battle in Sol System. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the massive chamber, their various forms creating a diverse tapestry of galactic civilization. But, today, fear dominated the usual atmosphere of diplomatic cooperation. High Chancellor Vex Tai, a tall, ethereal being from the ancient Etherian race, called the session to order with visible difficulty. Her usually calm demeanor showed cracks of uncertainty as she addressed the assembly. Fellow council members, she began, her melodious voice carrying across the chamber. We face an unprecedented situation. The unauthorized Vorthak action against the human species has resulted in unexpected consequences. On the chamber's central display, footage from the Sol System battle played on repeat. The systematic destruction of the Vorthak fleet was visible for all to see, along with sensor readings that defied conventional understanding of human technological capabilities. Representative Korthax of the hegemony raised one of his 6 arms. Chancellor, our intelligence networks are reporting massive human fleet movements toward Vorthak space. These aren't the primitive vessels we expected. Our analysts estimate their technology is at least 50 years ahead of current council standards. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the chamber. The idea that a species classified as barely space-capable could possess superior technology was almost impossible to accept. "How is this possible?" demanded Representative Zulmora of the Trade Federation. "We've monitored their homeworld for decades. They showed no signs of advanced military development." Chancellor Vextai gestured to the tactical display, which now showed detailed scans of the Sol system taken after the battle. "As you can see, the humans constructed their military infrastructure entirely underground and in concealed orbital installations. Our sensors never detected the true scope of their preparations." The implications were staggering. If humanity could hide such massive military installations from galactic surveillance, what other species might be concealing their true capabilities? The Council's entire understanding of galactic military balance was suddenly in question. "What are their intentions?" asked Representative Mordun of the Scientific Union. "Are they planning to expand beyond Vorthak territory?" The question hung in the chamber's air like a physical presence. No one had an answer, but everyone feared the possibilities. Meanwhile, in the depths of space between Sol and the Vorthak homeworld, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's flagship, the UES Retribution. The massive vessel dwarfed even the largest Galactic Council ships, its hull bristling with weapons and defensive systems that existed nowhere else in known space. "Admiral," reported Captain Martinez, her fleet coordinator, "advanced scouts have reached the outer edge of Vorthak territory. They're detecting significant military buildup around their primary colonies." She nodded as she studied the holographic display showing the Vorthak Empire's defensive positions. 36 star systems, hundreds of military installations, and one of the galaxy's most feared war fleets, all waiting for humanity's arrival. "They're terrified," she observed with cold satisfaction. "Good. Terror is exactly what they should feel." Behind her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These weren't the desperate survivors of a dying world that the Vorthak had expected to find. These were professional soldiers who had trained their entire lives for interstellar warfare, equipped with weapons and tactics that represented humanity's greatest scientific achievements. "Ma'am," called Lieutenant Commander Park from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. High Chancellor Vextai is requesting immediate negotiations." Chen considered this for a moment. The Council wanted to contain this situation before it spiraled beyond their control. They were probably hoping to broker some kind of peace agreement that would restore the status quo. "Open the channel," she decided. High Chancellor Vextai appeared on the main screen, her elegant features showing strain and worry. "Admiral Chun, I am High Chancellor Vextai of the Galactic Council. I wish to discuss the current situation and explore options for peaceful resolution." "Chancellor," Chen replied, her voice professionally courteous but utterly cold. "I appreciate your concern. However, I'm afraid peace is no longer an option." Vextai's expression tightened. "Admiral, I understand your anger, but military action against an entire civilization will only lead to greater suffering. The Council is prepared to ensure that the Vorthak face appropriate consequences for their unauthorized actions." Chen's laugh was bitter and harsh. "Appropriate consequences? Chancellor, they committed genocide against my species. 12 billion humans are dead. What consequences could possibly be appropriate for that? War crimes tribunals, reparations, territorial restrictions," Vextai offered. "The Vorthak government will be held accountable through proper legal channels." "Legal channels." Chen repeated the words as if they tasted foul. "Chancellor, tell me something. In the 3 centuries of galactic civilization, how many times have the Vorthak faced consequences for their aggression against weaker species?" The silence stretched uncomfortably long before Vextai answered. "The Vorthak have been difficult to control, but this situation is different. The scale of their actions, the scale is the only difference," Chen interrupted. "They've been committing smaller genocides for generations, and your council has done nothing meaningful to stop them. You've issued condemnations, imposed minor sanctions, and then looked the other way when they ignored your penalties." The truth of Chen's words was evident in Vextai's expression. The Council had indeed failed to effectively restrain the Vorthak Empire's aggression over the years, always choosing diplomacy over decisive action. What you're contemplating is revenge, not justice, Vextai argued. It will make you know better than them. Chen's expression hardened. Chancellor, you mistake my intentions. This isn't revenge, it's education. The Vorthak need to learn what happens when they target species capable of defending themselves. More importantly, the galaxy needs to learn that humanity will not tolerate genocidal attacks. And if your actions trigger a wider war, then the galaxy will learn what kind of allies they want to have, Chen replied. The kind who abandon their friends when things get difficult, or the kind who never forget when their friends are murdered. The transmission ended, leaving Vextai staring at a blank screen. Around her, the council chamber erupted in urgent discussions as representatives tried to comprehend the implications of Chen's words. Back aboard the Retribution, Chen turned her attention to the tactical situation ahead. The human fleet had reached the edge of Vorthak space, where they encountered the first line of enemy defenses. The Vorthak had positioned massive space stations at key points throughout their territory, each one armed with enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. Behind these fortifications waited their home fleet, over 3,000 ships representing the accumulated military might of one of the galaxy's oldest warrior cultures. Impressive, Chen admitted as she studied the enemy positions. They've had time to prepare since our victory at Seoul. Admiral, reported Commander Torres from the sensor station, we're detecting communication traffic between Vorthak installations. They're coordinating a unified defensive strategy. Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Good. I'd hate for this to be too easy. The human fleet approached the first Vorthak defensive line with what appeared to be reckless confidence. The enemy space stations opened fire as soon as the human ships entered range, filling space with streams of plasma and particle beam weapons. But the human ships didn't attempt to avoid the enemy fire. Instead, they flew directly into the weapons barrage, their shields absorbing or deflecting every shot with apparent ease. Impossible, screamed the Vorthak station commander as he watched his most powerful weapons prove completely ineffective against the human vessels. Nothing can withstand that level of concentrated fire. The answer came when the human ships returned fire. Their weapons were unlike anything in the galactic databases, streams of exotic matter that passed through conventional shields as if they didn't exist, striking enemy targets with devastating effect. Within minutes, the first defensive line was eliminated. Space stations that had protected Vorthak territory for centuries were reduced to expanding clouds of debris and superheated gas. How? Whispered the surviving station commander as his installation died around him. How are they doing this? The answer was simple, though he would never live to understand it. Humanity had taken a fundamentally different approach to military technology. While other species focused on building bigger weapons and stronger shields, humans had invested in understanding the underlying physics of warfare itself. Their weapons didn't try to overpower enemy defenses. They bypassed them entirely using principles that most galactic civilizations hadn't even discovered yet. Their shields didn't just absorb enemy fire. They redirected it using spatial manipulation technologies that treated conventional physics as merely suggestions. Admiral, reported Captain Martinez as the fleet advanced deeper into Vorthak space. We're receiving surrender requests from 14 Vorthak colonies. They're offering to lay down their arms in exchange for protected status. Chen considered this development. The Vorthak civilian populations had no responsibility for their government's military decisions. Humanity's war was with the Vorthak military and leadership, not with innocent civilians. Accept their surrenders, she decided. Establish protective cordons around their worlds, and ensure no harm comes to civilian populations. This war is about justice, not conquest. The decision surprised many of her officers, but Chen's reasoning was sound. Humanity needed to demonstrate that they were not the same as the Vorthak, that they could wage war without losing their moral foundation. As the human fleet approached the Vorthak homeworld, they encountered the Empire's main battle fleet. Thousands of ships arranged in formations that had proven effective against dozens of other species over the centuries. Admiral Gorthan, the architect of humanity's near extinction, commanded the defense from his rebuilt flagship. His earlier confidence was gone, replaced by desperate determination to protect his homeworld from the consequences of his actions. All ships, he broadcast to his fleet, remember what we fight for. This is our home, our people, our way of life. We will not let these humans destroy everything we have built. The final battle was about to begin, and both sides knew that the outcome would determine not just the fate of the Vorthak Empire, but the future balance of power in the galaxy. The species that had tried to commit genocide was about to face the full weight of humanity's carefully planned response. In her command center aboard the Retribution, Admiral Chun prepared to deliver the final lesson that the Vorthak and the watching galaxy would never forget. The monsters they had feared to create were finally here, and they were exactly as terrible as the Vorthak had imagined. But they were terrible in ways that no one could have predicted. The space around Vorthak Prime writhed with energy as two of the galaxy's most advanced fleets prepared for battle. Admiral Gorthan stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching as humanity's forces arranged themselves in formations that defied conventional military doctrine. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice tight with confusion, "the human ships are positioning themselves in what appears to be a completely defensive formation. They're not moving to attack." Gorthan studied the tactical display with growing unease. The human fleet had arranged itself in a perfect sphere around his forces, but they weren't advancing or preparing obvious offensive maneuvers. Instead, they seemed to be waiting. "What are they doing?" he demanded. The answer came from an unexpected source. Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge as she opened a direct communication channel to every Vorthak ship in the system. "Admiral Gorthan," her voice was calm and measured. "Before we begin, I want you to understand exactly what you're facing. You chose to attack what you thought was a helpless species. You're about to learn what that helpless species has become." On every Vorthak ship, holographic displays activated simultaneously, showing detailed readouts of human military capabilities. The numbers were staggering: weapon outputs that exceeded anything in galactic databases, shield systems that operated on entirely unknown principles, and ship counts that suggested massive hidden production capabilities. "This is impossible," Gorthan whispered as he studied the data. "No species could develop this level of technology in secret." "You're making the same mistake you made at Earth," Chen replied. "You're assuming that what you can see is all that exists. Admiral, humanity has been preparing for this moment for over 50 years. Every aspect of our civilization has been focused on becoming capable of defending ourselves against species exactly like yours." The tactical display shifted, showing not just the immediate battle space around Vorthak Prime, but the entire Vorthak Empire. Throughout their territory, human ships were appearing at strategic locations, not attacking, but simply making their presence known. "We have surrounded every major Vorthak military installation," Chun continued. "Every shipyard, every training facility, every command center. Your entire military infrastructure is now under human observation." Gorthan's blood ran cold as he realized the scope of the human operation. This wasn't just a battle. It was a comprehensive military occupation of his entire empire, executed with precision that spoke of years of planning. "What do you want?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Justice," Chen replied without hesitation. "You committed genocide against my species. Now you're going to face the consequences of that decision." The human ships began to move, but not in any pattern that Vorthak military doctrine could predict. Instead of forming traditional attack formations, they seemed to flow around the Vorthak fleet like water, always maintaining their surrounding positions while somehow managing to concentrate overwhelming firepower at specific points. The first exchange of weapons fired demonstrated the technological gap between the two fleets. Vorthak plasma cannons and particle beam weapons struck human shields and simply disappeared. The energy was absorbed, redirected, or somehow negated by defensive systems that operated beyond Vorthak understanding. Meanwhile, human return fire proved devastatingly effective. Their weapons passed through Vorthak shields without apparent difficulty, striking targets with precision that suggested perfect real-time intelligence about enemy ship capabilities and weaknesses. "Sir," the Vorthak tactical officer called out in panic. "Their weapons are targeting specific systems. They're disabling our ships without destroying them." Gorthon watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically dismantled. Human weapons struck with surgical precision, disabling weapons systems, propulsion, and communications while leaving life support intact. Within minutes, dozens of Vorthack ships found themselves helpless, but alive. "Why aren't they destroying us?" he demanded. The answer came from Admiral Chun. "Because dead enemies can't learn from their mistakes, Admiral. And this encounter is very much about education." Throughout Vorthack space, the same pattern was repeating. Human forces were engaging Vorthack military installations with overwhelming superiority, but instead of simply annihilating their enemies, they were systematically disabling them. Every Vorthack military asset was being neutralized, but casualties were being kept to a minimum. "Admiral," reported Commander Williams from Chin's tactical station, "all primary objectives have been secured. Vorthack military capability has been reduced by 93%. Their remaining forces pose no significant threat." Chin nodded as she studied the strategic display. The Vorthack Empire's military had been effectively eliminated as a fighting force in less than 6 hours. Decades of military buildup had been rendered useless by an enemy that operated on principles they couldn't understand or counter. "Open a channel to all Vorthack leadership," she ordered. Within moments, the faces of Vorthack military commanders, government officials, and civilian leaders appeared on screens throughout the fleet. Their expressions ranged from shock to terror to desperate anger. "Leaders of the Vorthack Empire," Chin began, her voice carrying absolute authority, "your military has been defeated. Your ability to wage war has been eliminated. Now we're going to discuss the future." Supreme Leader Vorthagi, the highest-ranking surviving Vorthack official, found his voice first. "What are your terms for our surrender?" "Surrender?" Chin's expression showed mild surprise. "Who said anything about surrender? This isn't a conquest, Supreme Leader. This is an intervention." The confusion on Vorthack faces was obvious. Military defeat usually meant occupation, territorial seizure, or complete government replacement. The humans seemed to be offering something different. "You attempted genocide against my species," Chin continued. "That action cannot be undone, and it cannot be forgiven. But it can be answered in a way that ensures it never happens again." New displays activated throughout Vorthack space, showing detailed plans for what Chin called Restructuring Protocol 7. The scope was breathtaking: complete reorganization of Vorthack society, military, and government along principles that would prevent future aggressive actions. "Your military will be permanently reduced to defensive capabilities only," Chin explained. "Your government will be restructured to include representation from species you have previously conquered. Your educational system will be reformed to teach the value of diversity rather than supremacy." Supreme Leader Vorthagi's anger finally overcame his fear. "You have no right to dictate terms to our entire civilization. We are not your subjects." Chin's expression didn't change. "You lost the right to self-determination when you chose genocide, Supreme Leader. The question now is whether you prefer to cooperate with restructuring or be replaced by leaders who will." The threat was clear and immediate. Humanity possessed the military capability to remove the existing Vorthack leadership and install replacements of their choosing. The demonstration of human technological superiority had made resistance futile. "But this isn't just about punishment," Chun continued. "The galaxy needs to understand what happens when genocidal species meet effective resistance. You're going to become an example, not just of defeat, but of transformation." Throughout the galaxy, other species watched the events at Vorthack Prime with a mixture of awe and terror. The humans had demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded anything in their experience, but, more importantly, they had shown restraint and purpose that suggested sophisticated strategic thinking. The Galactic Council reconvened in emergency session as reports of human victory reached all corners of known space. High Chancellor Vextai addressed a chamber filled with representatives whose worldviews had been fundamentally shaken. "Fellow council members," she began, "we must accept that our understanding of galactic military balance has been completely wrong. Humanity possesses capabilities that exceed our most advanced civilizations." Representative Korthax raised a trembling hand. "What are their intentions beyond Vorthack space? Will they be satisfied with this victory, or are they planning further expansion?" the question that terrified them all. A species with such overwhelming military superiority could easily conquer the entire galaxy if they chose to do so. Every civilization suddenly found themselves wondering if they would be humanity's next target. The answer came when Admiral Chun addressed the Council directly, her transmission reaching every member world simultaneously. Members of the Galactic Council, she began. Humanity seeks no territorial expansion, no conquest, no dominion over other species. We want only one thing: assurance that no species will ever again face the genocidal aggression that was directed against us. Her words should have been reassuring, but the implications were profound. Humanity was positioning itself as the galaxy's judge of what constituted unacceptable aggression. They were claiming the right to intervene wherever they determined genocide was being planned or executed. We propose a new galactic order, Chen continued, one where aggressive species face immediate and overwhelming response from those capable of providing it, where the strong protect the weak instead of preying upon them, where genocide becomes not just morally unacceptable, but practically impossible. The transformation of Vortex space proceeded with ruthless efficiency. Human administrators worked alongside cooperative Vortex officials to implement the restructuring protocols. Military installations were converted to civilian purposes. Educational curricula were rewritten. Government structures were reformed to ensure representation for all species within Vortex territory. But the most significant change was the establishment of permanent human observation posts throughout former Vortex space. These installations served as both guarantees of compliance and warnings to any other species that might contemplate similar aggression. Admiral Gorthan found himself under house arrest on his own homeworld, forced to watch as everything his empire had built was systematically dismantled and rebuilt according to human specifications. The irony wasn't lost on him. The species he had tried to eliminate as a threat had become the galaxy's most powerful force. Why? He asked during one of his interrogation sessions with human officials. Why show mercy to us? Why not simply exterminate us as we tried to do to you? The human officer, a young woman who couldn't have been much older than 30 Earth years, looked at him with an expression of profound sadness. Because we're not you, Admiral, she said quietly. We don't destroy entire civilizations because they might someday become inconvenient. We transform them so they become something better. As news of the Vortex transformation spread throughout the galaxy, other aggressive species began reconsidering their own policies. The knowledge that humanity could appear anywhere, anytime, with overwhelming force had a profound effect on galactic military planning. But, perhaps more importantly, species that had lived in fear of stronger neighbors suddenly found themselves with protectors. Humanity's promise to prevent genocide wasn't limited to their own species. They were offering protection to any civilization that faced existential threats from aggressive neighbors. The galaxy was entering a new age, one where the strongest species wasn't necessarily the most aggressive. For the first time in galactic history, military superiority was being used not for conquest, but for protection. The monsters the Vortex had tried to create had indeed awakened. But they were monsters who hunted other monsters, and the galaxy was about to become a much safer place for everyone else. 5 years after the Vortex intervention, as historians had begun calling it, the galaxy bore little resemblance to its former self. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the observation deck of humanity's newest installation, Sentinel Station, positioned at the crossroads of 3 major galactic trade routes. Through the massive viewport, she watched ships from dozens of species moving peacefully through space that had once been contested territory. Merchants, diplomats, researchers, and explorers traveled freely under the protection of what had become known as the Terran Guarantee, humanity's promise that no species would face extinction while humans had the power to prevent it. Admiral, called Commander Williams, who had been promoted to oversee day-to-day operations of the Sentinel network, were receiving the quarterly report from the Galactic Monitoring Division. Chen accepted the data pad and reviewed the numbers with satisfaction. Aggressive military actions between species had dropped by 94% since the intervention. Territorial disputes were being resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Most significantly, There had been 0 attempts at genocide or ethnic cleansing since the Vorthak defeat. The deterrent effect is holding, she observed. Good. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Some species had initially tested humanity's resolve, launching small-scale aggressive actions to see how the new galactic order would respond. They had learned quickly that human intervention was swift, decisive, and calibrated exactly to the level of threat posed. A minor raid against civilian targets resulted in the immediate neutralization of the aggressor's military capability. Attempts at territorial conquest led to forced mediation under human oversight. Anything approaching genocide triggered full-scale humanitarian intervention that left aggressive species disarmed and restructured. Ma'am, Williams continued, we're also receiving the final report from the Vorthak Transformation Project. Chen's expression softened slightly as she reviewed the data. The former Vorthak Empire had undergone the most comprehensive societal rehabilitation in galactic history. Their militaristic culture had been gradually replaced with one emphasizing cooperation, diversity, and peaceful conflict resolution. The process hadn't been easy. Many Vorthak had initially resisted the changes, seeing them as foreign impositions that destroyed their traditional way of life. But as younger generations grew up in the reformed educational system and older citizens saw the benefits of peaceful coexistence, resistance had gradually faded. Former Supreme Leader Vorthag has requested a meeting, Williams reported. He wants to discuss the final phase of the transition to full self-governance. Chen nodded. The Vorthak leadership had been gradually returned to local control as they demonstrated genuine commitment to the new social order. It was time to complete the process. An hour later, Chen found herself in a conference room aboard the station, facing the being who had once been one of the galaxy's most feared leaders. Vorthag had aged considerably during the transformation years, his carapace showing stress patterns that spoke of profound psychological change. Admiral Chan, he began, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance. I want to thank you for what your species has done for mine. The statement would have been unthinkable 5 years earlier. Then, Chen had been fighting to save her own species from extinction. Now, she was being thanked by the leader of the civilization that had tried to destroy humanity. Thank us? Chen asked, genuinely curious. We dismantled your entire way of life. Vorthag's mandibles clicked in what Chen had learned was the Vorthak equivalent of a rueful smile. You dismantled a way of life that was destroying us, Admiral. We were so focused on conquest and dominance that we forgot how to create, how to grow, how to find joy in existence. Through the conference room's viewport, they could see a Vorthak merchant vessel docking with the station. Its crew would trade with species that their ancestors had once considered prey, sharing knowledge and resources in mutually beneficial exchanges. My grandson attends university on Kepler Station, Vorthag continued. He studies xenobiology alongside humans, Etherian, and 24 other species. He's learning to see the universe as a place of infinite possibility rather than a battlefield to be conquered. Chen considered this information. The transformation of Vorthak society had been one of humanity's greatest experiments in social engineering. The results suggested that even the most aggressive cultures could be reformed given proper incentives and guidance. What about those who still resist the changes? She asked. Fewer each year, Vorthag admitted. Most of the old guard have come to understand that our previous path led only to isolation and eventual destruction. The few who remain unchanged, they're becoming irrelevant. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the station's command center. Commander Williams appeared on the conference room screen, his expression tense with concern. Admiral, we're receiving distress calls from the Rigel sector. A species called the Draknari have launched what appears to be a coordinated assault against 3 neighboring civilizations. Early reports suggest they're attempting complete extermination of civilian populations. Chen was on her feet immediately. How long until we can have intervention forces in the sector? The 7th Fleet is 6 hours out. But, Admiral, the Draknari are using some kind of advanced jamming technology. We're having trouble getting clear intelligence on the scope of their operations. Prepare for immediate deployment, Chen ordered. And send word to the Council. We may need diplomatic coordination if this situation is more complex than it appears. She turned back to Vorthag, who was watching with an expression of profound interest. "I'm sorry, but this meeting will have to be continued later." "Admiral," the former Vorthack leader said quietly, "may I make a request?" "What kind of request?" "Allow Vorthack forces to participate in the intervention." Chen stared at him in surprise. "You're asking to join a military operation?" "I'm asking to help stop a genocide," Vorthagi corrected. "My species knows better than most what it means to be consumed by aggressive hatred. If we can help prevent others from making our mistakes." The irony wasn't lost on Chen. 5 years ago, the Vorthack had been the galaxy's primary source of genocidal aggression. Now their former leader was volunteering to help stop other species from following the same path. "Your request is approved," she decided. "Coordinate with Commander Torres for tactical integration." As Vorthagi left to prepare his people for their first humanitarian mission, Chen made her way to the station's command center. The transformation of the galaxy was ongoing, but each crisis provided new opportunities to demonstrate that a different kind of civilization was possible. The command center hummed with activity as human officers coordinated with representatives from dozens of species. The Sentinel Network had become more than just a human institution. It was a truly galactic effort to maintain peace and protect vulnerable civilizations. "Admiral," reported Captain Harrison from the Intelligence Division, "we're getting more detailed reports from Rigel Sector. The Draknari appear to be a previously unknown species that has been developing in isolation for several centuries. They've emerged with technology roughly equivalent to pre-intervention Vorthack capabilities. And they've decided to test that technology against their neighbors," Chen observed grimly. "How many species are under attack?" 3 confirmed, possibly more. The Pakari, the Zalani, and the Corvin Collective. All peaceful species with minimal defensive capabilities. Chen studied the tactical displays showing Draknari fleet movements. The pattern was familiar: overwhelming force applied against defenseless targets, designed to achieve maximum psychological impact through sheer brutality. "They're following the same playbook the Vorthack used," she noted. "Fast strikes designed to eliminate resistance before anyone can respond." "Admiral," Williams reported, "the 7th Fleet reports ready for departure. Estimated arrival at Rigel Sector in 4.5 hours." "Good. What about our new Vorthack volunteers?" "Former Admiral Gorthan is leading a squadron of reformed Vorthack ships. He specifically requested permission to take part in the rescue operations." Chen shook her head in amazement. The being who had once orchestrated humanity's near extinction was now volunteering to risk his life protecting other species from a similar fate. The transformation was profound and genuine. "Deploy all available forces," she ordered, "and send a message to the Draknari leadership. Standard intervention protocol: 1 chance to cease aggressive actions and withdraw to their own territory." The message was transmitted immediately, but Chen didn't expect compliance. Species that launched genocidal campaigns rarely responded to diplomatic warnings. The Draknari would need the same harsh lesson that humanity had delivered to the Vorthack. But this time, humanity wouldn't be acting alone. As the intervention fleet departed Sentinel Station, it included not just human ships, but vessels from a dozen species that had volunteered to help protect the threatened civilizations. The galaxy had learned that collective action was more effective than individual resistance. "Admiral," Williams observed as they watched the fleet disappear into hyperspace, "it's strange to think that 5 years ago, we were fighting for our own survival. Now we're leading a coalition to protect species we'd never even met." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "The Vorthack wanted to create monsters, Commander. They succeeded, but not in the way they expected." Through the station's viewport, normal galactic life continued. Traders, scientists, artists, and diplomats went about their business in a universe that had become fundamentally safer thanks to humanity's willingness to use overwhelming force in defense of others. The monsters that humanity had become were indeed terrible. Terrible enough to make genocidal species think twice before acting on their aggressive impulses. But they were monsters with a conscience, committed to protecting rather than preying upon the innocent. In the Rigel sector, the Draknari were about to learn what the Vorthack had discovered 5 years earlier. The galaxy now had guardians, and those guardians would not tolerate genocide under any circumstances. The human response to the Vorthack's attempted genocide had transformed not just humanity, but the entire galactic order. The monsters they had created were exactly the monsters the galaxy had needed, predators that hunted other predators, leaving everyone else free to live in peace. And, as the intervention fleet approached its destination, Admiral Chen knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there would always be species that chose aggression over cooperation. But they would find that their choices now had consequences, delivered by a species that had learned the hard way that sometimes monsters were exactly what the universe required. The Vorthak had wanted to see Earth's monsters. They had succeeded beyond their worst nightmares.